Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm sort of very confused right now in terms of the time changes in New York in Eastern Standard Time. I think that they went back 1 hour, and it's sort of confusing because really turned my day off. I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'm thank you, Mr. Gerald and Mr. Gerald Pereira and Mr. Corbin for joining. Now, let me just put you gentlemen into the studios so that you can join the live. And is this Mr. Ned here or Mr. Pereira? Well, he seems to be not connected. Mr. Corbin, are you there?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sort of confused with. Are you, as I'm confused with the time change in terms of the
No.
Eastern Standard Time? I think
No.
my computer is programmed for that time, and it seems like I'm just even uploading my video today. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, and the YouTube says would not accept the videos. Today was just a confusion. I'm confused.
Andrew. It's it's not very encouraging to admit you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
Okay. So take your time and go through the process
Well,
of
it's not that I
elimination and
don't
get
know
it
what
right.
I'm doing. It's not like it happens. It happens all the time. I remember once I was in the States, right? And I had a class at 8 o'clock, and they just turned the Easter with the time flipped backward, and I went to school in preparation for the class at 8, and it was 7. So when I went to the classroom at 7, I said, "Where are the students?" And they said, "Oh my God, they did turn back the time." Because I was wondering, where are the students? They should be here at 8 o'clock, and as they normally are. But this is a time now when you have the time confusion with their turning the clock behind. And then I have the computer now that went backward. So that's why it confused me. Not because I don't know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, but it's a time confusion. That's why it's not good to be changing the time, the daylight saving time. Did I see Mr. Pereira? Go ahead, Mr. Corbin. Good evening, San P6092. Good day, Wise Virgin. Welcome to the chat. Yes, Mr. Corbin, you were saying something?
No. I'm just waiting
Yes.
for you to
Yeah, I
wait.
did not. I'm wondering if the other gentlemen are also not aware of the time, because I did say Eastern Standard Time. So I wasn't aware that the clock was going to be set backwards today. And
Well,
that is why I said,
it's 5 minutes past 4. Don't
yes,
worry
it's
about it.
5 minutes past 4, Barbados in the
Caribbean,
Caribbean, right? But it's going to be there. It's going to be there 3 o'clock. So it's fine.
No. Guyana and Barbados are on the same time.
They're on the same time.
Yes.
I did say Eastern Standard Time. So
Eastern
yeah,
Standard Time is Caribbean time. So
it's
right.
Caribbean time, right? Okay, good, very good.
We were at the same time
So
in New York.
yes, I wonder if Mr. Davidson, Mr. Ned will be joining us shortly. Welcome to the live, and we are going to be looking at Caribbean Betrayal. I did see Mr. Gerald Pereira. It seems like he's disconnected. The device is not connected onto the live. I hope he did not hear me saying that I was confused. Oh, he's now joined. Let me see if here, Mr. Pereira. He's okay. Well, until he gets here, I would. Oh, good, San. That's good. You're Dominican. Welcome. Okay, and I am actually in Santo Domingo. Entonces hablo español. So I'm in your country. That is San P 6092. Welcome to the chat, and I would like to see more Dominicans on the live. Okay, and maybe you know me. Some of you might have seen my face in Santo Domingo. Okay, good. Oh, the Commonwealth of Dominica. I got you. Not Dominican Republic, but the Commonwealth of Dominica. Welcome, San P6092. Thanks for that correction. Now, Mr. Pereira is here. We haven't seen Mr. Ned yet. I hope he's also not confused as I have. Mr. Pereira, I'm trying to get him in here. Oh, we're not able to have 3 persons on the live? Oh, good. Yeah, well, yeah, good. Yeah. Welcome, Mr. Pereira.
Yes, welcome, my brother.
Yeah, can you hear me well?
Yes, I'm hearing you well.
Thank you for joining, sir. Thank you so much for joining. And the topic of the program today is Caribbean Betrayal. And Mr. Corbin and Mr. Ned were sort of not very comfortable. Well, I shouldn't say comfortable, but not in agreement with that word. You were saying acquiescence. Mr. Corbin would have been a more appropriate word. But what do you think, Mr. Pereira? Do you think betrayal is a very good word to use in light of what happened with Edward Seaga, Eugenia Charles of Dominica, and also Tom Adams in terms of their siding with the United States, aligning with the United States against Grenada.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was at the time, Forbes Burnham was the president of Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the People's National Congress, Burnham's party, which had a strong down-the-line policy, anti-imperialist, supported the Cuban Revolution, and we have established relations with many countries. We recognize the PLO and all that, and we were part of that. And why I mention this to you is because there's some things about the Grenadian Revolution and so that many people are not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But Eugenia Charles, Tom Adams, and Seaga are absolute traitors. I like the term Mao Zedong, the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese revolutionary leader used for these people. I love that term. Running dogs of imperialism. I like that term for them. Do you know there was a meeting in Trinidad, and Manley and the others, they had this meeting, and I think it was Prime Minister Chambers, but they were trying to arrive at an agreement, within the Caribbean for work things out. And while they were inside, Eugenia Charles, Tom Adams, and Seaga were having a meeting outside with the United States, going against the CARICOM position, and gave the green light to the United States. President Burnham told Maurice Bishop that they're coming after you. Burnham told him that. And the Americans never forgive Burnham for that. They even threatened to bomb our airport. They always wanted to bomb the airport. They threatened us during Kissinger time. Because Guyana allowed the Cuban planes going to Angola to refuel here.
Yes.
In Georgetown. Because pressure was put on Barbados. And they applied pressure to Burnham, and Burnham never gave in.
Yes.
Yeah. So what Eugenia Charles and Tom Adams and them, and Tom Adams, the thing about Tom Adams is Burnham said, Tom Adams, who refers to himself as a Democrat and all of that, Tom Adams and all of those guys protected the bombers of that Air Cubana plane that was blown up in 1976. When you read the documents, if you listen to Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, when he read it from the documents, you will see that the U.S. intelligence agencies knew everything about the plan to bomb that plane. And they protected their intellectual authors. And Eugenia Charles and those people, the history will never forgive them for what they did.
Yes.
Never.
Yes. Yes.
And you see some Caribbean leaders doing the same thing today.
Mr. Corbin, as you're there, could you ask Mr. Ned? I don't have my WhatsApp right here. If he's available, if he's still coming to the live, could you? Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
Give me 5 minutes.
Yes. So, Mr. Pereira, I think that I agree with you in terms of the betrayal. I don't know any other way to describe it, because what we're seeing today now with Kamala, on the other hand, what's the thing is flipping here? On the other hand, is betrayal. It's another betrayal. Mr. Corbin, your thing is jumping. Is it my thing jumping or?
No, everything is flickering. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. I've got a page open on Telegram, so let me close that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're saying. Wow. Yeah. So the betrayal, Mr. Yeah. What we're seeing Kamala Parasad-Bissessar doing now is equivalent to what Mr. Seaga and Tom Adams and Eugenia Charles did from Dominica, right, Mr. Pereira?
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah, your thing is still flipping. Your thing is still shaking, Mr. Corbin. You might have to come out and come back in.
Yeah, let me just reset it.
Yeah. Yeah. So so go ahead, Mr. Pereira. So you're saying I can't see, because remember now that when we look at what Kamala Parasad-Bissessar is actually doing now in Trinidad, she's in dialogue with the United States at the back of Nicolas Maduro, They don't know what is happening. Even the people in Trinidad don't know what is happening. They're just seeing military personnel the other day. They understand that several people actually, is he here now? Several people actually several military personnel went into the Red House, right? And the Trinidadians don't know. And she's saying that, no, these people are not here to talk about war. They're here because they're in military partnership with us. What do you think about that, Mr. Pereira?
I mean, that is absolute disregard, contempt, not only for the people of Trinidad, but the people of the region.
Yes.
You know, this is, I mean, she is, well, you know, some people, the legal aspect, they will say, don't use the word liar. Say that you don't believe her.
Yes.
So I'm going to say, and I'm going to be decent by saying, I do not believe her.
Yes.
I do not believe her. And I know that they're cooperating with the Americans, with the U.S. intelligence services and all of that. That is exactly what they're doing.
Yes. 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 And when we think about the betrayal, now we're, you know, I read an article, I think from a Guyanese paper too, which suggests, the writer suggested in one of the Guyanese papers I read last week, that it took the CARICOM bloc over a decade to have come back together after that betrayal of Mr. Siaga, Tom Adams, and also Eugenia Charles. Can you explicate more on that the Caribbean was so divided that it took over a decade for them to come back together?
Well, you know, at the time, during that period in CARICOM, at the time of their overthrow, when Maurice Bishop and others, at the time when you had the beginning of the Grenadian Revolution,
yes,
you had a number of governments that were very progressive, very progressive. You had the Michael Manley, you had the PNP, then you had Burnham in Guyana, and so on. And Guyana did give the New Jewel movement support. I'll deal with that later.
Yes.
So, but there were countries that had a different line, like Barbados under Barrow, and to a certain extent the PNM, but in Guyana and Jamaica, right? Because you have to realize that those were the four countries, Jamaica, Guyana, and Barbados, that broke at the time of the Cold War, and all other than Mexico recognized Cuba and established relations with Cuba and so on. You know, and then eventually it happened within the broader CARICOM countries. But Jamaica had, when Siaga became prime minister, Siaga kicked out. There was a Cuban
ambassador,
a diplomat, ambassador. Ulysses Estrada, an African guy with he had he was bald, very very intelligent man, and Siaga accused the man of being a Cuban intelligence as agent, right? And got him kicked out of the country. And that was being, of course, that misinformation was fed by Washington. But we always had, this, there was the ideological divide, but yet CARICOM agreed on a number of issues. They did agree on a number of issues.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the end of the so-called, the breakup of the Soviet bloc and all of that, you know, we've seen that this left-right divide, the lines became a little blurred, because you saw the parties that you had considered right-wing, like the new National Party under Mitchell in Grenada, taking very progressive positions, you know, in relation to Cuba and within the greater in the CARICOM body. And some of those who we thought were the progressive elements, they ended up taking very reactionary or right-wing positions. You know? I mean, take for example, it was the UNC under Pandey that lifted the ban on Kwame Ture. I think you remember that, Kwame Ture?
Yeah. No, I don't remember him. Who is he? Could
you
remember?
Stokely Carmichael.
Oh yeah, Stokely Carmichael. Absolutely, absolutely.
Trinidadian born.
Yes, absolutely.
And he was banned from his own country.
And Rodney too. And Rodney was banned from Jamaica.
Yeah. But the thing about Kwame Ture is that he was from
Trinidad. Yes.
And the PNM, which is traditionally a party that traditionally enjoys the support of Afro-Trinidadians, that was the party that banned him.
Yes.
And it was Pandey who, when he came into office, lifted a ban. You know, of course, that was a progressive act, but look at the G generation with today, where the UNC has taken up that position, openly supporting American intervention in the region against a sovereign state.
It's interesting that you said that, because I met a Chinese citizen who, well, he's from Tanzania, but
Yes.
of Chinese descent, right? Full Chinese citizen of Tanzania. And he told me that Michael Manley went to Tanzania, the University of Tanzania, the university there, to pronounce a lecture, right? And when he was there, they asked him about Walter Rodney and the
Yes.
fact that he was a revolutionary. And Michael Manley's words were, well, you know, he was too rebellious, he was too defiant, we had to get him out. He was a troublemaker. And I said, Michael Manley said that? And Michael Manley was somebody who, you know, we thought was a revolutionary, one who was anti-US imperialism. So, you know, do you think that these guys were acting to some extent? Do you think that they were genuine in what they were doing, or were they just?
I would be careful with who said that, because I know that Burnham and Manley were close.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
I have one of Manley's books that he autographed to Burnham, and it was given to me by Burnham's late wife. But
yes.
They were very close. I think it's
Yes.
a Voice in the Workplace, and Voice in the Workplace.
Manley wrote that book, The Voice in the Workplace? Oh, wow. First time hearing about that book.
Voice in the Workplace. And all. Anyhow, they, I think the issue of Walter Rodney is a very, it's, you know, because Walter there was a school, a particular group of Marxists in Tanzania, the Dar es Salaam school.
Yes.
You had Walter Rodney, Issa Shivdai, Mahmoud Mamdani. I think the president of Uganda, he was there at the time. Yoweri Museveni.
Yes.
But there was the Dar es Salaam school was like the African equivalent of the Frankfurt School of Cultural Marxism. That produced people like Herbert Marcuse, Walter Benjamin, and Max Horkheimer, those people. So you had this school that was very influential. And there was a series of papers called the Silent Class Struggle. And they were Marxists, and they were critical of the Ujamaa, or the African socialism of Nyerere. They were critical of it. You know?
Mr. Corbin, you think that the word betrayal is a strong word. Why would you agree more with acquiescence in terms of the Caribbean perspective?
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, for that question, and greetings to someone who I've regarded for a long time as being a fountain of effervescent knowledge in Mr. Pereira.
Yes.
And this is the first time that I've had the privilege of being on a live with him.
Yes.
Thank you, brother. Respect.
I have listened to him on numerous occasions everywhere, but I am privileged for the first time to be meeting him on a live.
Yes.
And I am thankful that there's someone to join us this afternoon that can clear up a lot of the misconceptions that has happened around it. And the reason that I thought that betrayal at that time was the time to do was be a little bit strong, given this political climate, is because we have to remember that acquiescence by Eugenia Charles, Tom Adams, as well as the Prime Minister of Trinidad. It was Trinidad at the time. Anyway, they were caught between a rock and a hard place because the United States hegemony and the funding that came into their respective administrations was calling the shots with regard to their position. And they were told straight up, if you do this, you will have the next elections and the financial support for your policies and so on and so forth going forward. Barbados is of particular importance because of Tom Adams's relationship with the Jesuit control mechanism run out of Barbados. Okay? Tom Adams was elected based upon his compliance with the Jesuit order that runs Barbados. And Tom saw no problem with him joining the alliance and making sure that the United States of America was going to be operating on the platform using military force to overthrow what was perceived as a communist threat. There was absolutely no communist threat in Grenada.
Right. Right.
This was a freedom fighter standing for Caribbean rights, standing for Caribbean ideology, and standing for the progressive importance of uniting the Caribbean region from the south going north.
Yes.
Which had previously never been done before. Because we had a fracture. At that time, there was a fracture, as Mr. Pereira has quite eloquently outlined. There was a fracture in the CARICOM, where the North was doing one thing and the South was saying something else. And this leads back to my continual repeating of the CARICOM problem. Okay? Now, I've often said that CARICOM and carried on a long time. Okay? The most important thing is this. At the end of the day, we had a prime minister in Tom Adams where the domiciled hegemony of the United States military and political power was in Barbados.
Yes.
Okay? Remember, Barbados was calling the shots with regard, because it was Tom acquiesced to using Barbados as the forward operating location and the forward operations base for the military operation into Grenada.
Wow.
Okay. Yes. I was 13 years old at the time, and I remember going to the airport after school every afternoon just to watch the military aircraft taking off and landing, helicopters being rearmed and flying out again to carry out airstrikes. Okay, we had the entire complement of the United States military forward operating base operating from Barbados until the Pearls airfield had been secured, and then Point Salines had been neutralized. After that, everything just shifted into Grenada because the bridgehead for that operation was in Barbados. And the Prime Minister of Barbados, Tom Adams, acquiesced to that because of Jesuit pressure that was put upon him because of the connections within the Republican Party. That was the sole reason. And Tom, being the influential person that the United States of America was using as their spokesman for the sponsorship of the narrative of overthrow of Grenada, obviously influenced Dame Eugenia Charles's position as well as the other
as Edward Seago. Wow.
Edward Seago of Jamaica.
Yes, yes.
Tom Adams and less than a decade later, Tom lost his life to the very people that he acquiesced to.
How did he lose his life?
Tom Adams was assassinated by poisoning.
In Barbados?
That's correct.
Yeah, it said he was poisoned.
He was poisoned. The same Jesuit cabal that he acquiesced to, that he did the bidding for the overthrow of Jamaica, ultimately that sword arrived at his door. And he was poisoned by the same Jesuit cabal that controlled it.
Wow. Now, Eugenia Charles, what role did she play? Because I thought she and Mr. Seago were the center, at the center of this, involvement in the Grenada invasion. But as you're saying to us today, Tom Adams had more role. He had a more prominent role in that overthrow.
Absolutely. Well, Dame Eugenia Charles, remember, Dame Eugenia Charles was leaning towards United States hegemony more than ever at that particular point in time, because she became Prime Minister of Dominica at a very troubling time for Dominica. She was faced with a lot of degeneracy in the island, and a lot of unfocused mischief was going on in Dominica and so on, that was actually put in place by nefarious political characters. And she took a stand. For it, and the United States of America recognized that here was somebody that they could actually manipulate if they gave her enough money. And she wanted to build a new cruise terminal and various other things and so on in Plymouth and in Roseau and so on. And remember that this is 1983, following Hurricane David in 1980. Okay? The United States of America put almost $500 million in aid into Dominica following Hurricane David in 1980. And she did everything she could to foster that relationship. and that relationship was ongoing. Dominica was in the middle of rebuilding from the devastation of Hurricane David in 1980, and then threatened again by Hurricane Allen in 1981. And Dominica was in a very critical era of its history. There's a lot of mischief going on, people utilizing aid packages and utilizing aid in the wrong directions, and the aid not reaching the people, which is exactly what we discussed this morning with regard to Jamaica and so on. And she was caught between a rock and a hard place because the political entity saw or perceived her to be weak, and she did not want to be in a position to disenfranchise herself from the United States of America and the funding that would have put Dominica back on its feet. And that was one of the governing factors behind her acquiescing to Tom Adams's pressure.
Wow. Mr. Pereira, we have to learn our lessons. And one of the things about the Caribbean is that we don't learn our lessons. And I think that is because we don't know our history, as Mr. Corbin. And Mr. Corbin is, a reservoir of history, just like Mr. Pereira.
I just want to say one thing.
Go ahead, Mr. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Pereira. Finish it.
What I've just said with regard to Dominica is my interpretation. I'm not saying I'm correct.
Okay.
So if there's someone that knows more than me and is better than me at interpreting what I've just said, feel free.
Well, and I think that is what history is about. History is about interpretation and people's narratives. It's not that somebody is saying the full truth. That's why we have to read, engage people, different perspectives before we come to our own analysis. So, Mr. Pereira, we don't learn our lessons. So we fail to read history, and Caribbean citizens don't know our history. For the most part, we just don't know. We're ignorant of history for the most part. What do you think, Mr. Pereira, is the link between what is happening in Trinidad now and Guyana to a certain extent to what we saw, the play out in what we saw with this Grenada invasion?
Well, before we get there, there's some interesting points that Mr. Corbin raised there.
Yes.
There was a lot that was happening in Dominica, because I remember, I know the then Prime Minister Rosie Douglas, but long before he became Prime Minister, you had one Patrick John. And after Patrick John came out, there was something that they discovered that Patrick John was trying to, he tried to get the support of, he was in contact with elements of the Ku Klux Klan and all of that. The Ku Klux Klan, I recall, to seize power in Dominica, right? Because Dominica was a place that they were selling passports to people from all over the world, right? That was one of the things they were involved in. Not only Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda too.
Yes.
But what was interesting is what Mr. Corbin pointed out about Eugenia Charles, because here you had Tom Adams on one hand, the Barbados Labour Party, of which was an official member of the SI, the Socialist International. That's the body that brought together social democratic parties.
Yes.
Like the British Labour Party, the New Zealand Labour Party, you know that, the PNP of Jamaica.
Yes, the PNP, yes.
Yes, and there's some party with observer status, I think 1 and 2 the Caribbean. But his party belonged to the SI. And then the Americans, Thatcher and Reagan, founded a new international called the International Democratic Union with Helmut Kohl in Germany. And they regroup all these right-wing parties under that. Not even under the Christian Democratic International, which is now called centrist. But they created this right-wing IDU, International Democratic Union, that would bring together all the parties that were neoliberal in orientation, right? Because you had Thatcherism in Britain and Reaganomics, which was the
conservative.
Yes. Two names of neoliberal economics or the Washington Consensus. That's what they run with. So he's right, because Eugenia Charles had this close alliance with Washington and London, you know, and here was Tom Adams, who was meant to be a social democrat, just went over with these two, and they worked with the Americans and played a very, very, very important roles in against bringing about what they did in Grenada. Because as Mr. Corbin, I remember passing through, and the airport in Barbados had all these U.S. planes, transport planes and helicopter taking off. There was a forward base. So he's right. So if you look at what is going on now, that is it's a continuation. It's a continuation because I think what we are witnessing, and this is why I like the term betrayal. I think that if you look at the history of those who we side with, they have never ever had our interests at heart.
No.
I mean, let me give you an example. Britain just said they will provide £2.5 million to Jamaica.
Yes.
In the recovery, we got £2.5 million. And in the first year of the war in Ukraine, you know how much millions of pounds they went to Ukraine? So we are insignificant, but yet we want to hold on to them.
Yeah.
The people are actually contemptuous of us, but we are happy to play the role of and prostrate ourselves before Massa. We continue to do it. Whether it's Kamla, whether it's Siaga yesterday, or Tom Adams or Eugenia Charles, we have Kamla and to a lot extent in Guyana.
Yes. Now the question is, Mr. Pereira, when you say we, who are the we? Is it the government or the oligarchs that control our country that decide to hang on to these people? Are we the ones who are really in charge of our own affairs?
Well, you know, I have always said that, you know, some of our leaders, sovereignty could be staring them in their face and independence. I don't think they understand these concepts, right? Because when you look at what is happening in our country here, there are so things that we look around and see, and we can see that our sovereignty and independence is being trampled upon. It's clear. I mean, even the blind would see that. I listen to representatives of the big power, the Western nations in Guyana, and they talk not like ambassadors, they talk like governors.
Yes.
They talk like governors. They actually tell us what to do, what not to do, who should be your friends, who we should trade with, who we should cut back with. They actually say this.
Yeah. Well, when you think about what is happening in Trinidad, with the fact that they have their own resources, their oil and gas fields, Guyana the same, and they decide that they want to trade with their neighbor, their closest neighbor, and the U.S. has to give them a permit. You really, isn't that blatantly obvious that something is wrong?
Yeah, and this is the hegemony that Brother Corbyn is talking about. This is it. This is it. It's a reality, something that we are faced with. And this type of, you know, we know it as neo-colonialism, but what we are seeing is it's more open. It's very overt. You know, it's no longer behind the scenes. I mean, there's actually directives. I mean, like there was a march in support of Palestine, right? We had several marches, and one was that the marchers will march past the U.S. Embassy. Somebody got wind of it, and the U.S. said no. The U.S. Embassy said no march is passing the embassy, right? And I know how the chain of command goes. It goes to the president. You know, the external forces tell the president tells the Minister for National Security, and the Minister of National Security calls the police chief. So there'll be no march past. So in our own country, you're not carrying arms, you're not doing anything, you're just peacefully marching past the embassy, and we were prohibited from doing that. And then we're told about sovereignty. It's every day we are seeing that our independence and sovereignty is being trampled upon. And Brother Corbyn is right. I absolutely agree with him. The Americans actually told Tom Adams what they told Siaga and all of them. And they said the same to Kamla. And the same is on Guyana. But Guyana is trying to move between the raindrops by, on one hand, saying certain things out there, but at the same time, peddling this U.S. false narrative. Right? There's one man who is the media czar, a man who survived years because of his pure opportunism. He served different governments. He can survive under anybody. And he said that the U.S. is not threatening anybody in the region. The U.S. is only threatening Maduro. And he is the PR czar for the Guyana government, for the president's office. So he's pushing that. If he as the PR czar is saying that, then you know what's coming from the office of the president. We know. So the foreign minister said that Guyana will not be bullied by Venezuela. And we replied saying that Venezuela is not the bully. The bully is the United States. The U.S. is the bully.
And we don't want to...
we come to understand yes.
We don't want to also negate the fact that, there are problems with Venezuela and Guyana, right, in terms of that region, that Essequibo region. We just don't want to, but we understand that Venezuela does not have the means, and the economy is not that great to wage a war against Guyana. They wouldn't want to do that because they know that the U.S. would get themselves involved. The United States is there to provoke these two countries so that they can go to war and that the United States can invade Venezuela for having guns. So it's a provocation. And we know that because before the Essequibo, before the oil and gas fields were found in Venezuela, we didn't hear any great thing about any rift between Guyana and Venezuela. Was there, Mr. Perro, any great...
Brother, this is our position. You are absolutely right. This territorial issue is only resurrected or resuscitated every time Washington, right, resurrects it when it comes to when they want to go after a regime that they're opposed to.
Correct.
But they always supported Venezuela on the territorial issue. When we got independence in 1966, Venezuela, this is long before Hugo Chavez and Maduro, Venezuela invaded Guyana, part of what is called the island of Ancoco, and took it. And America did nothing about it. Nobody did. They supported that.
Yes.
When Burnham had left-wing policy supporting the liberation struggle in Africa, recognized the PLO, the Sahrawi Republic, the Nicaraguan Revolution, the Cuban, the Americans were pushing Venezuela to invade us. I mentioned this many times. They sold them F-16 fighters. And President Burnham launched the People's Militia. Now that there is a government in Venezuela that they're opposed to, they're now friends of Guyana. You see the Kissinger line, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests.
And Trinidad,
leaders don't seem to understand this. And Chavez himself said that when he came to Guyana. He said that this territorial issue was created by the colonialists, the imperialists.
Yes.
He said,
Mr. Corbin,
put it on the back burner and work together.
Yes. Mr. Corbin, you mentioned this morning that you woke up this morning, you didn't see any headlines on Venezuela. Could you expound more on that? Why do you think the international media has become silent on the Venezuelan crisis?
Well, I wouldn't like to expound on something that has only been an observation of mine.
That's okay.
So far.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
I'm not gonna sit here and say, well, this is the reason or that's the reason. I just found it interesting that the main headlines and so on had now shifted to Nigeria. Why is Trump attacking Nigeria?
Yes.
Okay. Now this comes back to exactly what we were saying this morning with regard to the constant flip-flopping from one part of the barometer to the other. Trump is like a tropical storm that keeps running up on the beach and losing power and then passing over the island, and then when he gets on the other side, he gets a little bit more strength and goes off in another direction. At the end of the day, the situation comes down to this, and this is what Caribbean nationals need to understand today. The United States of America is not being run by US-led interest. It is being run 100% by the Zionist ideology. And the Zionist ideology are looking for the means to consolidate their power based upon the knowledge that by 2027, the hegemony they have enjoyed since the founding of the Federal Reserve in 1901 will come to an end. and the power of the United States dollar to be weaponized against society will come to an end. And they are desperately looking for collateral in order to be able to rebuild the mountain of debt. Now, they have a plan to take US debt and transfer it into crypto, then devalue it and leave the world holding the bag. Well, that's not actually going to work. But getting back to Venezuela and the Caribbean region, the Zionist ideology have a plan, and I've outlined this to you and I showed this to you. They don't care what happens to the small strip of desert that they have spent the last 70 years cultivating. That is a non-issue. Okay, the entire Balfour Declaration expired in 2023. It's gone. It's over. It's finished. The creation of the Jewish state is a non-entity. Okay, it has come to an end, and the Zionist ideology have moved on, and they have chosen their new home, and their new home is a state that they have run economically since the beginning of the First World War. And that is the state of Argentina. But Argentina has not that much oil and gas reserves with which for them to carry out their plan. So they need a collateral guarantor in order to be able to finalize the move from Israel to Argentina. And Venezuela supplies that in abundance. It is sitting on the largest oil reserves in the world. Once you have secured Venezuela under the Zionist ideology, and Maria Machado is a Zionist. She has already stated that if she is installed by the United States hegemony, she will move the Venezuelan embassy to Jerusalem.
Yeah, she did say that.
Okay, she will turn up at the Wailing Wall like Andrew Holness and read the Zionist ideology to the Chabad Jewish cabal, and then turn around and put the country to the sword. Okay, at the end of the day, the most important thing for Caribbean nationals to realize is that all of the rhetoric, all of the distractions are all pointing in one direction. But we need to look at the big picture over here, and that is the Zionist ideology has chosen a new state in Argentina. Why? Because Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile form the lithium triangle, which is 25% of the world's natural resources of lithium. And what does lithium guarantee? Robotics, satellite communications, cell phones, electric cars, and everything you need for a weapon system to be manufactured. Okay? The lithium triangle is the most valuable geopolitical point in the South American continent. And the Zionist ideology need the energy resources of Venezuela in order to do the massive amount of mining that is required to get to those 25% of resources of lithium. And the only way they're going to do it is if they take over Venezuela. Okay? Now, the United States of America would be absolutely foolish to decide that they're going to do a land invasion in Venezuela. Number one, geography. Venezuela enjoys 1,380 miles of coastline. It enjoys another 1,400 miles of border with Brazil and another 1,250 miles with Colombia. In addition to that, you have no less than 500 splintered militia that are Colombian, Brazilian, and Venezuelan nationalists, all living in the border regions that are absolutely rubbing their hands in glee to get their hands on weapons to move in with the Chavista militia that supports Maduro. 90% of his army is Chavista militia and have a crack at the United States military. Do you want to walk into a hornet's nest? Go right ahead. But you know what? It could be crapo smoke your pipe end of the day. Simple as that. In addition to that, Russia and China have armed Venezuela very effectively. Now, let us take a look at history. In the Battle of Okinawa in 1945, the United States of America lost 36 ships in 7 days. Why? Because the Japanese were fighting ferociously to defend the last bastion before their country was invaded. Venezuela has taken delivery of supersonic anti-ship missiles from Russia, 250 of them. They have also taken delivery from China of the HQ-16 surface-to-air missile. Okay? 500. 500 were delivered to Venezuela in 2022, which begs the question. Venezuela knew this was coming.
Yeah.
Okay? Venezuela knew this was coming because of what was happening in Washington long before Donald Trump was elected for the second time. Remember, Donald Trump has an axe to grind with Venezuela because Venezuela was one of the domicile countries in which the Democratic Party and the CIA facilitated the the Dominion electoral system and used Venezuela, where the servers were based, for that system to steal the election from Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, being an individual who only concentrates on optics and images, wants to settle that score. Okay? But this goes much further. This goes much further than a lot of people realize. But the big picture, Israel wants Venezuela for its new state. Everything else you see happening is irrelevant because at the end of the day, the United States of America can withdraw to its coastline. Remember, the United States of America is not a great land power. It is a maritime power. It relies on air power and sea power to project its hegemony. It's not a great land power like Russia or China. Okay? The Americans can go home.
But it has a cultural power. It has a linguistic power. It has just so much about it that we cannot negate. That
I disagree completely. I disagree completely with that statement, and that's the reason why I disagree with it. While America may have linguistic power and cultural power, it is a perceived. It is a perceived power based upon what people perceive as economic power. But when you really look at it, the shell of the United States petrodollar is no longer there. The real collateral today is gold. Yeah. And what does Venezuela have? Venezuela sits on 20% of the gold reserves in the southern hemisphere.
And that's why
empowers the Zionist ideology to seize the collateral with regard to putting the state of Argentina as their new home. And just a couple of pointers, okay? What happened to Argentina's gold in 2017? In 2017, the Mossad launched an operation to steal Argentina's gold. They put the gold on a submarine, the ANS San Juan, sailed it out into international waters, transferred the gold to an Israeli-owned vessel, shipped it to Europe, and then they sank the vessel with all hands and called it an accident. That is documented fact.
I recall that.
Right? Now, at the end of the day, then the sponsored President Milei in a color revolution, got him into power, took him to Israel, made him cry his eyes out at the Wailing Wall, had him read the Zionist ideology of the Chabad Jewish Talmud, and then sent him back to Argentina and put a chainsaw in his hand and say, yeah, this is what you're going to do. This is revolution. We're going to cut things and so on. And look at the result. The guy has privatized every single industry in Argentina and run the country almost into debt. Now the Zionists have stepped in and loaned him $80 billion in economic and cooperative development for Argentina. And where does that put you? Look at another pointer. How many flights have there been between Tel Aviv since 2020 and 2025 per week? Per week. Commercial flights between Tel Aviv and Buenos Aires. 420 plus per week. That's the only destination in the world that is served that regularly. Why? Because the Israelis are moving out to the new land of milk and honey. Israel is going to take over Argentina, but they cannot do it if they don't have Venezuela. Read the Andina Plan. Okay, look it up. Go on Google and type in Andina Plan and read that document. Understand precisely what is happening. Right here in our Caribbean hemisphere, our prime ministers and CARICOM are complicit with one of the greatest geopolitical heists in history. I digress.
Yeah, and we're going back to Mr. Pereira, but Mr. Corbin, I would like to ask you, who gives money to whom? Who supports whom? Does Israel support the United States or the United States support Israel?
The taxpayer supplies the money from the Israel lobby. The AIPAC is the AIPAC is like a AIPAC is like the is almost like the how shall I put it? Well, if you've ever been to India, I'm not sure if you've ever been to India, but in my experience in going to the Indian city of Goa on the west coast of India, you have storekeepers who have runners, what they call runners, and they go out and they take orders from around the city and so on, and they come back and they gather the goods and then they go and deliver them. Okay, this was a British colonial imperial construct, by the way. because transportation was a problem in India before the British brought in railways and so on in the 1800s. At the end of the day, that is exactly what AIPAC does. AIPAC works on behalf of the Israel lobby, and they have AIPAC is like the runners. They go out and they secure funding and so on from everywhere. They nickel and dime every single business. Most of the operations with regard to large businesses, particularly the military industrial complex, are based upon the funding that has come through prostitution, drug running, and a host of other small businesses that are all contributing. And they pay every single member of Congress.
Yes. We have to move on. We have to move on, Mr. Corbin. But one of the things we have to really look at, though, is history. History has to be our lesson here. And
Absolutely.
if AIPAC controls now the United States, it had to have controlled Britain, because Britain passed on its empire to the United States.
Well,
so perhaps AIPAC then, the Jews controlled the
Well,
British Empire.
let's look at the evidence. Let us look at the evidence, okay? In 2023, in November of 2023, exactly 2 years ago, the UK signed an in-depth cooperative agreement with Israel for every facet of its operations, including MI6. And you can see that document online, okay? That document is online. I'll send you the link to it.
Yes.
At the end of the day, the most important thing is that Israel and the UK, AIPAC in the United States of America, are all one cooperative, developing global geopolitical entity that are controlling the Western hegemony into every single facet of the Western Hemisphere, including making sure that the war in Ukraine is continued, making sure that Europe is destroyed, and making sure that the South is protected. And that is precisely why the United States military is in Venezuela.
Thank you so much. Mr. Pereira, back to you, sir. We are in the throes of what is going to be a war. It doesn't seem to me that this war is going to be prevented unless some supernatural intervention with Venezuela. What do you think? Do you think that the U.S. is going to... Because what we see in Syria, for example, the U.S. was after the Assad regime for how many years? And eventually they overthrew them. And we talk about China and Russia. Where were they during that time? Couldn't they have saved the regime of Syria, as we are purporting that they might do to Venezuela? Go ahead, Mr. Pereira.
Before we get to Syria, Mr. Corbin raised some interesting points, and that you'll have to have a different show to
conversation for that. Yes.
Zionism is not just a regional ideology that reacts to Arab nationalism or to that area. You know, the struggle of the Palestinian people for their homeland and all that. Zionism, the tentacles are global. And Noam Chomsky wrote a book called Turning the Tide, U.S. Intervention in Central America and the Struggle for Peace. In 1994, I can recall there was a bombing in Argentina at a Jewish cultural center. A truck, right, loaded with bombs, and it exploded and killed 84 persons. The U.S. and the Zionists, followed by the United States, they said that it was the work of Hezbollah. Go and check it. They said it was Hezbollah because there's a large Arab community in Argentina. You have a large Arab community in Brazil and Argentina and Venezuela. Those three countries have large Arab communities. Lebanese, Syrians, Palestinians, and so on. But Hezbollah was accused of bombing that Jewish cultural center. If you look at it, in the Americas, there have been a convergence, cooperation between the United States intelligence services, the Zionists, and neo-Nazi organizations. They work together. You recall Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon in France, who fled. He went, this is the end of the Second World War, he went, He was protected, of course, by elements in the Vatican. The Vatican allowed many Nazis to get away. He ended up in South America, and he became a colonel in the Bolivian army. And he was on the pay list. The U.S. knew of him. The Israelis were looking for him, but the U.S. had him covered because he was working for them. And then you had the Zionists at another level working with these neo-Nazi outfits, because you remember the colonels, the Latin American colonels and so, right? There's an entire fascist international. And this international works with the Zionists and the intelligence services. And then somebody got winked. They abducted, they got Klaus Barbie, the Israelis kidnapped him, took him back. He went to France and trial. And the day of his trial, he said, look, I've always been anti-communist. Since Hitler days, in Hitler, I fought, I helped y'all, and look what you're doing to me now. So Mr. Corbyn is saying something which is right. Zionism, the Zionists are in everything. It's not just struck at this, they reacted, this is a region, we want to set up a home, this so-called state of Israel and all that. No, this is much bigger than what we're seeing.
Yes.
And faster many of us realize that. And that is what I think Mr. Corbyn has raised here. And I think it's a very, very interesting dimension to what we're saying. It's not an accidental or quick that Israel, and when the UN General Assembly voted for the sanctions, the illegal sanctions to be lifted against Cuba, it's the US and Israel voted against it. You know, the US and Israel. So even the invasion of Libya and the disappearance of 150 tons of Libyan gold, where is it? 150 tons of gold just gone, and the equivalent, almost equivalent, 160 tons of silver, which was meant to bring in the golden dinar and all. Where is it? It's just gone. And Britain has seized Venezuelan gold. Britain has Venezuelan, holding out the Venezuelan gold in London. So it's and you cannot leave out the Zionist element in this. You can't.
One other very important point to reinforce what Mr. Pereira is saying is that the 150 tons of gold were stolen from Libya. 710 tons of gold were stolen from Iraq.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Well, let's go back to Venezuela. Do you think that there's going to be a war? And if not, or if there's a war, do you think that Russia and China will be involved in this military operation? Mr. Perro.
Well, I think an interesting point was raised when he said, Mr. Corbyn said that, Trump is like a hurricane, loses his thing. Now he's talking about Nigeria. I agree with one analyst who said, he said he does not believe that Trump will really go after Venezuela. He wants to really put pressure on Maduro to see what will happen, whether they will move against him or what. But he said, then again, you don't know Trump. He might just go in and bomb. But I think that U.S. admiral, head of the Southern Command, that just retired, they said he retired. He gave in his resignation. I think there was serious disagreement in what, and as was pointed out, 11 million Venezuelans are mobilized. Then you have the National Liberation Army, one of the guerrilla groups in Colombia that is still in possession of their arms. And one of the boats that was destroyed, Trump said that the boat was moving drugs and belonged to them. We know that's a lie. And if you attack Venezuela, certainly the National Liberation Army, this guerrilla group that has thousands, they're going to fight. They're going to come to the defense of Venezuela. And the Venezuelan the militias are armed, and Venezuela has a lot of sophisticated weaponry that was provided over the years, because they saw, as Mr. Corbyn rightfully pointed out, Venezuela knew what was coming. And they have some weaponry, some missiles and others that are a serious threat to the U.S. Ships and the personnel in the region. And I think that after what happened in Syria, as you mentioned, I don't think Russia and China, because Venezuela is a strategic partner in BRICS, I don't think Russia and China is just going to let Trump or America just walk over and then go. It's not going to happen that way in Syria. I think the Syrian situation, what happened in Syria, is after time, the regime was wore down because Assad could not have survived all those years if you didn't have that amount of support. But what happened was the oil and gas in Syria was in areas that was controlled by the Americans. So they were looting the oil and gas from Syria. And then you have Turkey that has its neo-Ottoman ambitions, right? Because Turkey stays out, and they have their own little thing where the thing fall that they go in to help. They got their own thing about carving up little areas. But the people who overthrew Assad, because some of Assad generals, the Russians stole Assad. Some of the generals, because people were not receiving, not everybody could be patriotic and fight for homeland and liberty. There were those who were taking money and all of that, and many of them betrayed the regime, and they opened up the gates. Of course, Assad forces fought. They did what they had to do, but eventually it was overwhelming. There were so many of these pseudo-Islamic these pseudo-jihadist groups being backed by Turkey, some being backed by Qatar, and the West, and the West. And we keep, I think I mentioned this on a number of programs, shows we had, that you found it interesting that since the 2 years of genocide in Gaza, where is Al-Qaeda? We have not heard from Al-Qaeda. You've not heard from ISIS or ISIL. They have not lifted a finger against the Zionists. Israel was bombing when the new government, the cutthroats that are in power in Damascus. Israel were bombing them, and they never fired a shot at Israel. But they were attacking Hezbollah. They were attacking Hezbollah, that is part of the resistance against Zionism. The point is that Al-Qaeda and ISIL are creation of the Western intelligence agencies and the Zionists. They created them. That is why you've never heard, they've never been, since Al-Qaeda has been in existence, it has never attacked a Zionist target, and ISIL has never attacked a Zionist target. ISIL only kills Muslims and Christians. ISIL has never killed Jews. ISIL, check it out, most of those who have been killed have been Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims. ISIL kills Muslims and Christians and Yazidis. They do not kill Jews. It is very noticeable. The faster people wake up to this, we will see where this is going.
Now, the question to you both, gentlemen, and perhaps you can begin, Mr. Corbin, if Venezuela succeeds, if the U.S. is intimidated by Venezuela and does not invade military and take out Nicolas Maduro as they desire, isn't that going to be another Cuba on U.S. hands? And how are they going to feel about that? Aren't they going to be intimidated that just like Fidel Castro, they couldn't get him out? So here we have another Cuba in the region on our hands. Do you think the U.S. empire is going to tolerate that, Mr. Corbin?
Well, let us look at the historical aspect of what America stands to lose. America stands to lose its control forever over any sort of control politically within the state of Venezuela. Now, the loss of political control does not mean that the Zionists will give up. Okay? I personally believe that, as I mentioned in my radio program yesterday on 246BajunVibesRadio.com, that the Zionists will pressure Maduro into creating a defense and pressuring the region into a state of hysteria. And then all of a sudden, they will find some off-ramp to reduce the pressure. But what will happen is that more sanctions will be put in place and so on and so forth, and the suffering will increase a little bit on the Venezuelan people. You will see some discontent happening in the people, and that's when Mossad will infiltrate the generals and the military closest to Maduro. Exactly what they did with Assad. What they did with Assad is that they created ISIS, Israel State Intelligence Service. That's what ISIS stands for. It was created by the Obama administration, the CIA, MI6, and Israel State Intelligence Service. They created, it laid siege to Syria. And the reason for the entire Syrian conflict was because Syria refused to allow Qatar to put a gas pipeline through their country into Europe.
Correct.
At the end of the day, the most important thing is with regard to Syria. Let's draw the two comparisons right here. Okay, Syria geographically is only 70,500 square miles and is surrounded by belligerent neighbors. You can't get a lot done if you're surrounded by hounds. All right. Venezuela is 307,500 square miles, and it's surrounded by two very powerful economic and military allies. Okay, the difference is that you can put pressure on Maduro and bring a lot of siege conditions to Venezuela in an effort to reduce pressure in the region. Everybody says, oh, well, it didn't amount to anything, and so on and so forth. And everybody loses focus and move on to the next distraction, the next narrative, okay? Like Nigeria, while Mossad goes to work with Maduro's people on the ground, until one day, all of a sudden, somebody caps Maduro, and boom, the show is over. And Mossad wins, and Trump walks away saying, oh, well, I didn't have any control over that. Because by that time, he would be out of power. Remember, he can't come back in. And that will happen on the eve of him leaving office. The Caribbean needs to be very clear. CARICOM needs to be very clear. We need a declaration, a CARICOM declaration. And I'm going to read to the people and the audience listening this afternoon what I wrote. And I sent it to you. Okay. I wrote the following. I wish everybody to listen to this, okay? Just let me pull it up here. Just give me 2 seconds. What we have to remember is that a declaration that is sponsored by the people, that is bringing together the ability for the voice of CARICOM nationals to be heard, is very, very important. Absolutely important. And the reason I say that is this. It is a situation where if the people of the region, in a collective consciousness, actually protest and put in writing the conscious thinking of the region, we stand a better chance of awakening far more international recognition than if we stay silent. And here's what I wrote. Okay? Clear and concise points for an action summit. It is my opinion that the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamala Bessasar, needs to be personally encouraged to take a command decision. That being, call an emergency CARICOM Heads of State Summit meeting in Port of Spain immediately. This move will deter any U.S. actions in the immediate future, as security for the delegates needs to be optimized. Clear, concise action points for that summit must be declared. 1, the Caribbean region is not at war with Venezuela and has not supported the prior fomenting of tensions with Venezuela that were carried out by the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley. 2, whereas the Caribbean, as a region considered to be under the hegemony of the Monroe Doctrine, does recognize that this doctrine, while of specific importance to the United States, cannot and must not be used as the premise for unsolicited and unlawful attacks on CARICOM member states or any other Caribbean region state, Venezuela, nor be used as the premise for militarization of any one of the CARICOM states of the Caribbean Sea and accompanying CARICOM member state exclusive economic zones. 3, whereas economic and international geopolitical repercussions in many areas of the regional geopolitical diaspora are placed significantly under threat, and the CARICOM member states shall not be supportive or nor complicit in any actions that threaten or otherwise destabilize the economic sovereignty of any of its members, nor their ability to contribute to the global economy. 4, whereas this emergency summit called for the unified Caribbean representation under the United Nations Charter Article 2.4, and hereby calls for cessation of all hostilities and withdrawal of all U.S. forces from the region and an immediate dialogue under a special UN resolution, namely Caribbean Regional Peace and Cooperation. 5, whereas the sovereign states of the Caribbean and the CARICOM delegation do hereby abide the terms as expressed and do provide their incumbent diplomatic corps and representatives to uphold the express points of this emergency summit under the auspices of the Treaty of Chaguaramas and its binding amendments. 6, whereas the sovereign states of the Caribbean shall seek the express attention of the United Nations and the International Court of Justice in continued dialogue with regards to bring into account those organizations and individuals whom are known to be fomenters of transnational instability within the Caribbean region, and to expressly and without prejudice adjudicate righteous justice in the best interest of the international community and the Caribbean people.
That's great. What do you think about Mr. Pereira? His pronouncements there.
Yeah, well, I think it's very good. But I saw some a comment there saying, "Sir, she's not going to do that." I don't think you're going to get that from her. I think what we need to do is my brother should forward that to you have the Assembly of Caribbean People that brings together regional organizations that are standing up. They've issued a number of statements. I think it's something that we need to look at. We should put it out, and it should be circulated. Definitely, it should be circulated. I agree, but I don't think that should be directed at Kamala, because she has taken a position, and that is
a defiant one. A defiant one. She's
a defiant one. She has bought whole line and sinker the entire the thing. She's bought that,
Mm-hmm. 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 So where do we go from here in terms of as a region? Do we just say CARICOM? Because when you think about it, as you said, Mr. Pereira, Jamaica, Guyana, Trinidad, and Barbados are the, for lack of a better word, I think those four countries are the most influential in CARICOM. Would you agree with that? Would you gentlemen agree with that?
Of course,
Yeah.
Brother, I'm talking to you, and Mr. Corbin put up something which is very interesting, and if you're serious, if you're committed to the Caribbean being a zone of peace and you're post the war, nobody can dismiss that. But then you have people who post all sorts of comments and so I want to say something based on what you mentioned. I think people need to look at these things. You jump up and you say, to hell with this body, you stand with America. Let's look at certain facts.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, one, the Air Cubana bombing, 1976, this in October.
Mm-hmm.
That dastardly act was committed with the terrorists orchestrated that act with the full knowledge of the U.S. intelligence agencies. It's well documented. When they got to Barbados, they checked in. The first call they made was to the U.S. Embassy. This is all documented. They went to a meeting, went back, came out to Barbados, went to another hotel, and so on. Up to when Mandela, do you know when Mandela went to the United Nations and when he went to America, the United States Force? He was still on the list, listed as a terrorist.
Yes. Yeah. I remember.
Mandela, the United States listed. So when people talk about you saying, oh, this here, what you're thinking, the United States does not have the interests of the Caribbean at heart. They never did. They never recognized our independence and sovereignty and took it seriously. You study the Monroe Doctrine, as Mr. Corbin, and you know that.
But Haiti too.
Yeah, and Haiti. United States supported the apartheid regime in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I heard Fidel Castro at the World Conference Against Racism, spoke to the thousands in the stadium. And Castro said that when the Cubans were in the battlefield, they had to adjust their battlefield tactics because South Africa was going to use limited nuclear strike on the Cuban and the Cuban troops and the liberation forces with the full knowledge of the West. Mm-hmm. In other words, America had given them the green light to bomb the hell out of Mandela, ANC, the Azanian Liberation Army, and all of them, SWAPO, MPLA, and all of them. Good. And you know who provided the nuclear components when South Africa was constructing the bomb? Israel. Mm-hmm. The Zionist state of Israel provided the technology. Mm-hmm. And when they were negotiating the transitional with the clerk and handing over, one of the conditions was that the new ANC government will hand over the nuclear weapons, the nuclear technology to the West. So it was okay if apartheid South Africa have the nuclear bomb to nuke the freedom fighters. But fit to be in the hands of the black government, that was something else. And then we have, you've seen people talking, we have dummies who defend these people. They don't have our interests at heart. What you look at the time, how much aid, look from the time when you had the Arthur Lewis talk about the development model, the Puerto Rican model, and all that nonsense. How much aid did the US pour into the Caribbean? You check it out.
Yeah.
From the time Dominica was a colony of Britain, find out how many Dominicans had scholarships from Britain from the time that they were a colony up to independence to go and study medicine in Britain. Check the numbers. Then check how many went to Cuba to study medicine.
Yeah.
They don't have our interests at heart. That is why Britain can say, King Charles can say, we'll give Jamaica £2.5 million for reconstruction, but you give millions of pounds, millions to Ukraine.
And some British citizens are complaining that why are we helping Jamaicans when our people here in England are in trouble?
And they are in trouble. Their economy is in trouble.
Yes, it is.
Big trouble.
Yes, it is. Now, Mr. Pereira and Mr. Corbin, there's a question here. Do you take an objective approach to understand where Kamala Person Becessor and TNT are coming from? Mr. Corbin, let's begin with you.
I was just about to ask you if I could address that question, please.
Yes.
So the question is, did you take an objective approach to understand where Kamala Person Becessor and Trinidad and Tobago is coming from? Yes, actually, the reason that I wrote what I just recounted to our audience was because I understand the objective approach. Mm-hmm. Because if there is a properly thought out strategy with regard to the continuation of CARICOM's progression towards a unification, the objective approach would begin with a summit that encounters or encompasses the 6 points in which I outlined. Mm-hmm. If there is a strategy, now we are clearly seeing that if you're following the United States of America, there is no strategy. But if you want to have a progressive CARICOM, if you want to rescue the vestiges of the CARICOM image and actually establish a unified, prosperous mm-hmm. Caribbean for our sovereign nationals of the region, you are going to have to put a strategy in place based upon 6 similar points or those 6 similar points or those 6 points. So correct. To say that, to actually understand the objectivity, first sit down and think carefully on a strategy that protects our people of the region. Don't just say that it's going to be, oh, you need to look at something objectively. No. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the windows. I'm looking way beyond down the road. I'm looking 50 years into the future, where I understand that if we don't act now, the Caribbean region will not exist, because I have no intention of giving up my national sovereignty simply because somebody is too ignorant to take action. Okay?
Correct.
No. Well said. Yes, with the Mr. Furrer, you could give your. Do you think that we're thinking about this objectiveness he's purporting that?
No, I agree. And when you said that people of Trinidad, I saw some videos. I saw where PNM supporters are saying that they're going to go and help Venezuela. They're going to fight. They're going to cross and get into Venezuela. I saw them. PNM supporters. That's in main opposition, wearing the T-shirts with the PNM logo, say we're going to Venezuela to fight, help the Venezuelans. So this is an issue. Of course, Trinidadians are divided. There are many Trinidadians who are opposed to Becessor's position.
And that is what I don't like, Mr. Pereira, that, we have become divided politically. I say on my channel, we ought to look at the thing legally and, and objectively. And I'm not on Mrs. Becessor's side or Young's side or Rowley's side or PNM. I'm neither PNM nor UNC. Yeah. I'm just looking at it from an objective perspective. And I don't want us to be divided on political lines, because guess what? We can't reason here. You read something from the Trinidad Garden. Why are you reading from the Trinidad Garden? It's PNM controlled. But if something is good and I need to highlight it, nothing is wrong with reading it. Yeah. And that is what they are saying, and they're attacking you based on what the source you are saying, because they think that it's tied to a party. And this is what is happening in our Caribbean. Now, Mr. Pereira and Mr. Corbin, if it means our independence or sovereignty lies on the fact if Venezuela is invaded and Maduro is taken out of power, is toppled, is this the end, or will this be the end of our sovereignty as a region?
Well, I think we need to understand very clearly what the end of sovereignty means.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to take a step back to 2020.
Yes.
Okay, in 2020, the entire world, all 194 countries that signed the World Health Regulations of 2005, in 2020, when the World Health Organization made a declaration of a medical emergency of international concern, and parliaments around the world put in place the regulation for that, every single country's constitution was suspended. And this
Yeah.
is one of the reasons why I wish Mr. Ned was here, because he would properly explain this situation even better than I can, because he is a constitutional expert. But the constitution of every single Caribbean country was suspended in 2020. And I'm drawing specific reference to Barbados because the Attorney General of Barbados, Mr. Daryl Marshall, stood in Parliament on the 5th of February 2020 and suspended the constitution via an act of treason, based upon the fact that he was citing a regulation from a foreign power. That is an act of treason. You suspend your constitution because an unelected foreign power says that there is a medical emergency of international concern, which turned out to be a complete hoax. Now, what does this have to do with Caribbean sovereignty going forward? Changing the government in Venezuela will have absolutely no effect on the spiritual collective consciousness of sovereignty loving Caribbean nationals. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It will have no effect. The most important thing that we need to recognize as sovereign nationals of the Caribbean region is that, irrespective of the lack of constitutional integrity, where our prime ministers are running around doing whatever they feel like because there is no constitution, we have to come together as one people, one region, and stand for what is righteously minded, spiritually imbued within each one of us, to unite the region on a collective spiritual consciousness that puts our people first.
Yes.
Not the optics and the images of so-called pandering to one flag and running down the road behind trucks, waving one in a political situation. Absolutely not. The Caribbean is worth more to us as a region unified than it is to any political party or any change of government, because long after governments have ceased to exist, our region and our people must survive. And so help me God, I will never stop saying what I have been saying since 2021, is that our people have an understanding, and they are possessed with the spiritual consciousness to do so. And until we recognize that and we lay hold of that righteous consciousness, and we stand with the flag bearing our blood as our ancestors have borne, okay, because our ancestors' blood is calling to us from the earth. Are you going to stand and allow this to happen, or are you going to stand up and take the position of a unified, sovereign national Caribbean? Answer that question and then come back to me.
Well, I'm with you. I gotta agree with him. I agree with him. That's our line. Everything he said, there's nothing there to disagree with. We support that, as you know. And the point people need to understand this. Empires, and emperors behave as though empires will last forever.
Mm-hmm.
They decline.
Mm-hmm.
And no one, if you're not seeing what is happening, look, every day in the United States, you're not getting mainstream coverage. There are huge demonstrations. Millions of Americans are marching against Trump. Right? Church organizations, labor workers, left-wing, progressive, everybody, millions in the streets. And the ICE agents, look at what they're doing in the street to people who, American citizens, are being treated the way you are being dragged out of your car. You're being rounded up is exactly like the Gestapo. I don't know what more we want to see. That when you're seeing the empire in its most vicious form, this is downright naked fascism. If it's not fascism, then what is fascism? It is naked fascism, and you're seeing how repressive the arms of the state are. Trump is saying that he doesn't have to go to Congress to go to war. Trump is the king.
Yes.
Trump
Yes.
is the king. Trump is
Yes.
talking about going in there and killing him.
Yes.
You know? Well,
Yes.
Trump is talking about putting bounty. I have called on the Caribbean Progressive Forces and Simbalia. Let us put a bounty on Trump.
You know, that's interesting because I published a video last week on that, last Sunday, and hardly anybody watched it. They thought it was normal for Trump to say before international media and domestic media that he has the right to kill, right? Without any due process, without asking Congress for any permission at all, because he is, as you're saying, king. And people did not see the alarm bell. There was no, but let us deal with this matter, Mr. Pereira and Mr. Corbyn. Why Venezuela not signing the maritime border agreement with Grenada? They're keeping back Grenada. Venezuelan narcos have been harassing Grenadians fishermen for years. Now, is that true?
I don't know much about the maritime border agreement with Grenada.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to comment on that. But on the issue of Venezuelan narcos and the drugs coming from Venezuela, listen, if you talk to people who've been in Coast Guard and intelligence people, they will tell you where the drugs are coming from. I do not believe. I mean, Venezuela is a huge country. Far bigger than Ghana. Venezuela is a huge country.
It's huge, yeah.
You have groups. You have paramilitary groups in Colombia. They may not as be powerful as before, but they're involved for years in the illegal running drugs. They might also be. It has been established that they work with drug traffickers who are Venezuelans. But the drugs are not coming out of Venezuela. There was an attempt, I think it was a lieutenant colonel in the Venezuelan armed forces who was carrying the fight against some of the drug runners. And there was an attempted assassination of him. But Venezuelan military has been intercepting the drug traffickers. But most of the drugs that is going to the United States is not coming from Venezuela.
Yes.
Even President Petro pointed that out.
And the UN and the DEA.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, it's not from there. And we know that this whole thing of going after Venezuela on the pretext about drugs is just to bring about regime change. They always do this. You know? So if you have, if you claim that they're Venezuelan fishermen are the drug traffickers are harassing Grenadian fishermen, then the U.S. boats are out there.
Yeah.
And the U.S. boats out there.
Yeah.
The U.S. are not. Why the U.S. are blowing up boats?
Well, I would like to make one point in support.
Yes, Mr. Corbyn.
Are they not seeing those boats?
Yeah. As I said, and I'd like to make an observation with regard to supporting Mr. Pereira here, is that here it is, you have the United States military with the most advanced surveillance techniques, satellite radar, and network-centric ISR capability. And you have targeted strikes against boats that cannot be identified, people that cannot be identified, but yet one single vessel can make it all the way to an island south of the Dominican Republic before it is sunk and its cargo of drugs offloaded into the sea so that the DEA and the Dominican Coast Guard can find it. And then you have a package of cocaine washing up on a little beach on a little island in the Grenadines. Well, here's the intelligence with regard to that. Now, who in the United States of America is the top dog connected to the drug cartels in South America? The United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio is partnered with Daniel Noboa of Ecuador, who controlled the largest drug cartel out of Ecuador, running on the basis of his banana shipment company.
Correct.
Russian FSB 3 weeks ago intercepted 1.6 tons of Mr. Noboa's cargo, illicit cargo, at the Polish border coming into Russia, into Belarus. Okay, the FSB, 1.6 tons of Mr. Noboa's cargo. And the fox head logo of the Noboa drug cartel was found on the packages intercepted in the sea off of Dominican Republic, as well as on the beach in the Grenadines. So please tell me, what does Mr. Rubio think that he is achieving by fomenting conflict with Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua? Well, you want to know why? Mr. Rubio, when he was 16 years old, was arrested by the United States Law Enforcement, the Drug Enforcement Agency, for being a partner in a cocaine running operation that was carried out by his uncle in Miami.
Wow.
So he has a long history of being involved in narcotics and drugs, Mr. Marco Rubio.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay? So at the end of the day, you have the Secretary of State sitting at the top. Nobody's looking at him. And everybody down here bombing little boats in the sea with absolutely impunity. There's no evidence.
Correct.
There's no arrest. There is nothing, even recognition of any bodies recovered or anything. But yet the Secretary of State is flying around the world telling people that the narrative for regime change in Venezuela is narco-terrorists.
Yes.
Look, I understand one thing very clearly, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at this program, okay? When you sit back and you watch this program later on, or if you watch it at any point in time, take note of what is in the chat. Watch the YouTube video in the chat and look at the Substack link in the stack that identifies all drug cartels in South America were formations and constructs of the Central Intelligence Agency and MI6.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
So when Donald Trump sits at his desk and says, "We're going to kill the people that are bringing drugs into our country," I would like to hand him a 9mm service weapon and say, "Could you please shoot the man standing next to you?"
That's right.
That's powerful. Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Andrew, I want to tell you a story that's very important. Many years ago, when I was in Libya, residing in Libya, I met a representative. There were several of them, but I spoke with a representative of a party from Panama. It was called the Workers' Revolutionary Party. It was a left-wing Marxist-oriented. And they told me that one of them, attorney, he said one morning he got a call. And this man wanted to meet with him to do some legal work. So he met with the guy and he said, "Well, who recommended you? How did you get?" He said, "Look, I went through the yellow pages and I saw your name in the force. I decided to call you." That's what he told him. So the man proceeded to tell him certain things. And this is what he said. There was a brigadier general in charge of the some U.S. base of force in Panama. And he was involved in the drug run. And he wanted this money, how he can take this money that was illegal and make it legal. Wash it, as they say, wash the money, make it clean. And he wanted him to do certain work that they would take this money and then they will buy things at the U.S. military base. So they would set up something that would, like supplying the U.S. military. Set up some company supplying the U.S. military. They will arrange the contacts and everything and so, but supplying the U.S. military. So if they make 20 million in drug money, they wash it in such a way, at least 15 million will become legal. It's very complicated, but I can't remember, but that's what he was saying. And he said, he turned to the man and said, "You got the wrong person." But the point they were making was that top brass in the U.S. military were involved in the drug run in Panama and had ways of taking the illegal gains to make it legal, legitimate. But they went to the wrong man because he was an anti-imperialist activist and a member of a left-wing organization. So when they realized that, they said, "Hey, this thing created a lot of trouble." Good. So as the brother pointed, as Mr.
Corbin
pointed out, the U.S., look at the Oliver North story case with the Contras. Oliver North and them were involved. The CIA was involved in the drug run, and the money was used to fund the Contras. If the CIA goes to Congress and asks, if they ask for 350 million and then you can't get it, they can only get X amount. They get the extra, the money that they want from the drug thing. They've been involved in that. You remember there was one man who was the U.S. drug czar, McCarthy, I can't remember his name. His
Yeah,
wife
McCarthy.
caught coming out, I think, of Colombia with drugs, and he resigned. So they have been involved in that. They have been involved in that.
Now, gentlemen, we are talking about Mrs. Kamala Person Vicessor, but one of the commentators here, so one of the viewers did say, and I think that person is right, even though being on Kamala's side, that the PNM did also sign an agreement with the American administration to have these military operations done through the Status of Forces Agreement. Can we only blame Mrs. Vicessor, or are these two administrations, these two parties, responsible for what we are now seeing in Trinidad, Trinidad's response to this U.S.-led war on Venezuela? Mr. Corbin, can you respond?
Sorry.
Well, we have to look at the history of the Southcom involvement in the Caribbean region. Southcom came out of the Vietnam War in 1975, where the reinforcement of the 1961 amendment to the Destroyers for Bases Agreement that was signed by President Theodore Roosevelt and Winston Churchill on the 6th of September 1941. And after 1975, when the United States of America was soundly beaten by the North Vietnamese and sent home packing, Southcom was originated from that because the United States of America realized that consolidation of its backyard under the auspices of those amendments in 1961 had to be reinforced, given the fact that the United States military didn't have anywhere to fight. And that kicked off the United States meddling in Central and South America. Okay? At the end of the day, America was already in South America causing problems. Okay? But after the Vietnam War, the Caribbean came under focus because America was badly bleeding, hemorrhaging cash, hemorrhaging finances and so on, and the military basically didn't have anything to do. Now, Southcom was the construct to supposedly reinforce CARICOM. No, it wasn't. It was to give the United States of America the hegemonic control using military interdiction powers to be able to reinforce its foreign policy directives for the Caribbean region in what it perceived to be the communist threat of the Cold War, continuation of the Cold War that was building momentum in Cuba and perceived to be building momentum in Grenada and then across the pond in Angola, not too far away. Southcom then branched out into a training program that encompasses annual training in the Caribbean region. That extension of that treaty that was signed by the PNM in 2024 in Port of Spain was just a further amendment of the 1961 agreement following the 1941 treaty. Remember, the treaty that was signed between Roosevelt and Churchill in 1941 was for 99 years. What the United States of America has done is reinforce their hegemonic control to 2041 and potentially beyond. Remember what I said about the Zionist ideology seizing control of the region. They are the architects behind the technotronic transhumanism agenda and the UN 2030 goals. Okay, and it means nothing to them to extend something on a piece of paper, particularly if they're paying the government a healthy backhander to those instruments that can make it possible. And that is precisely what happened with the PNM. Okay? One of the most important things to recognize here, it comes down to the Caribbean people again. It always comes back to us. We, the sovereign nationals of the Caribbean, we have to make the conscious collective decision as sovereign nationals of this region that we take a stand against that. Because even although our elections may be rigged from now to never-ending morning, okay, we still have the power as the people to make the collective conscious decisions to put who we need as our representatives by whatever means necessary. Remember, this discussion started talking about the freedom fighters of the Caribbean, Marcus Josiah Garvey and Mr. Morris Bishop. Okay, what did Mr. Bishop do? He made a collective conscious command decision to take Grenada forward. And while it ended in a revolution and an invasion, that does not mean that we must sit back and say that the hegemony that has controlled the region still has power over us. I'm sorry.
Correct.
We're standing
Correct.
independent, sovereign nationals of the Caribbean region, and we want a progressive Caribbean region.
Thank you. Well, we'll have to wrap up now. I'm sure you guys have things to do. It's Sunday. So
I just want to
what
say,
would be? Yeah, Mr. Pereira. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Pereira.
Yeah, just quickly. We've always been told about this communist threat and the communist threat. It's a mythological. It's absolute BS. Look at the United States. The United States went to war with Vietnam, communist Vietnam. And today, the US does big business with Vietnam. Vietnam is still communist. It's led by the Communist Party. China is led by the Communist Party. The US invested and put the companies. Look at China today, a power. So why the Americans never speak? They never said anything but the communist threat of China or the communist threat of Vietnam. You don't talk about that. But when it's in their so-called backyard, it's a communist threat. It's Cuba or Venezuela. Two things. The party in Venezuela, the leading party, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. Hugo Chavez said from the beginning that the USVP, the Venezuelan Party, Socialist Party, is not a Marxist-Leninist party. They made that clear. You have the Communist Party of Venezuela. You have many left-wing parties. He said that party draw from the socialist tendency. Of course, from Bolivar, from Marti, from Dessalines, they learned. Liberation theology, everything, the Latin American liberation theology tradition, all these have shaped the party. So the Chavez, Maduro party is not a communist party. Let's make that clear. Venezuela has an independent communist party that at times is at differences with, they have clashes with Maduro, right? And from my perspective, that's precisely because the Communist Party of Venezuela is so dogmatic. The other thing is with Cuba and this thing about communist threat. No. Even if Cuba was not communist in orientation or had a communist party, the Americans will still treat Cuba the way they're treating Cuba today. There'll still be an embargo and all of that. You know why? Because Cuba is the only country in their so-called backyard that fiercely defends its sovereignty and independence. It has nothing to do with communism.
I agree with you. I agree.
Now,
let us answer some more.
Cuba is capitalist tomorrow, but fiercely say we're pursuing national capitalist path, the US will have no control. You will not have any control over economy, and so they will still be under system of communism.
You're right. Now let us look at some of the
people need to think. You have been, as Malcolm X said, you've been hoodwinked, you have been bamboozled, you've been had.
Very well said, Mr. Pereira. Now we have some comments here before we go. The Observer is saying the 100% tax increase is on alcohol and tobacco products that I think Kamala Bissessar has imposed on CARICOM products. I am not aware of that. Are you guys aware of that?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, I'm aware.
I don't drink and I don't smoke, so I don't care.
Yeah,
I know what was happening in Guyana. I think one of the Trinidadian companies, I think recently they have some agreement. Massy. The Massy supermarkets were bringing in products. Mostly the products that they're selling is from Trinidad.
Okay.
And you're not seeing a lot of products from Guyana. So people were complaining about that.
Well, Grenada,
because Guyana had problems with their products reaching the shelves of Trinidad.
That Jamaica, just like Jamaica. I think that is a thing where they like to import, but they don't like things export rather. They don't like things coming into their country. Grenada has enjoyed 42 years of peace and stability since the U.S. intervened on October 25, 1983. Many Grenadians had the opportunity to lift themselves out of poverty. How do you guys respond to that?
The U.S., the United States has not contributed to people lifting people out of poverty in
Grenada.
It has nothing to do with the United States. Which part of the world? People need to understand that in imperial relations with a colony, with the one that is considered the one that is colonized in one other form, whether it's the open colonization or neocolonialism, that the imperial power always benefit in the unjust economic arrangement or the imbalance in power. They always do. So I don't know of anywhere where the U.S. went in and brought peace. The U.S. went into Iraq, and look at where Iraq is today. Look at where Iraq is today. The U.S. went into Syria, and Syria is off the radar now, but a lot is happening in Syria, right? They went into Somalia. Look at Somalia. Look at where Somalia is. Iraq. Another one, Trump is talking about going into Nigeria. Wherever they went in, they have left. They went into Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. So I don't know which part of the world they have intervened that they brought peace and stability. If there is some reduction in the poverty level in Grenada, I think that has to do with the policies, the government, whichever one is in office, that are pursuing. Grenada is a small, it's a country with a small population.
Yeah.
You know? A country like us, if you with policies that go against neoliberal economics, you can abolish poverty, make poverty history in Grenada.
Yeah,
poverty is not a natural phenomenon. It's because of unjust economic systems. It's about wealth. Wherever wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, wherever wherever strategic resources and the means of producing and creating wealth are controlled in the hands of a few, whether the few be the bourgeoisie, a corporate elite, or a communist bureaucracy or whatever, so right, like what you had in the former Eastern Bloc. I've always been socialist in orientation, but I have never been one who supported or said that what the Soviet bloc had was what we wanted. Of course, the Soviet Union made tremendous achievements, but there were things that, that aberrations and other things that could have been. And many Marxist theorists and socialists have criticized that. But we also need to understand, our people need to understand our history, that the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, and places like Russia, what is part of Russia now, Belarus, and those places, like what is now the former Yugoslavia, the Eastern Bloc, those places were never part of the colonial project. Those countries never had colonies in the globe, in Africa or in the Caribbean. They didn't come into our countries, invaded it, committed colonial genocide, killed indigenous people, and plundered the wealth from this part. Right? Nor they did not have colonies in Africa. They were not part of the trade in captured Africans. That the trade, the Atlantic slave trade, that provided the material basis for the takeoff of the Industrial Revolution and capitalist development, as Walter Rodney pointed out in How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and Eric Williams from Trinidad in Capitalism and Slavery. The West Europeans did that. So I don't worry about the Russians. The Russians are not my enemy. The Russians that invaded my ancestors, invaded Africa and captured my ancestors. I'm not going to pick your enemy, as Mandela said, take your enemy and make them my enemy. No.
Yeah. And this person is responding to The Observer, which is a very brilliant response. Grenadians were tortured when the Americans invaded. The Grenadians saw education because Bishop had made it his priority. Absolutely. What are you talking about? And the same thing with Michael Manley. If Michael Manley had not really introduced that revolutionary educational, policy in Jamaica, I don't know where Jamaica would have been today. Go ahead, Mr. Pereira.
Maurice Bishop, the NGM created the Center for Popular Education. Mm-hmm. They were teaching Grenada under Eric Gary and the Grenada United Labour Party. There was tremendous, they had a high level of illiteracy. And under the Grenadian Revolution, the illiteracy was wiped out.
Mm-hmm. Why is Grenada
the Center for Popular Education? This is well known.
Yes, gentlemen. Why do you think Grenada is dilly-dallying in terms of?
So that person is right.
Yeah, deciding whether or not it's going to use its airport as a radar system. I don't think has there been a definitive response from Grenada about using their airport for a radar system of the United States?
Not so far. I have not heard of any.
Why do you think he's dilly-dallying, Mr. Corbin? Do you know why he's probably not? giving a definitive answer?
Well, you have to, again, let's revisit the history that has accompanied Mr. Mitchell since his becoming prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Decon Mitchell made a strategic decision for Grenada, which I applaud. I am not a fan of his government. I'm not a fan of the people he has around him, but he made a very strategic decision for Grenada in putting Grenada in a position where oil exploration can be done in the best interest of energy independence. That has to be applauded. You have to give Jack his jacket. Okay.
Yes.
I believe that because of who he is affiliated with, and when you connect the dots, the company that he is affiliated with to do the oil exploration is Nigerian. Who is Trump attacking right now? Nigeria.
Wow.
And if he allows the United States of America to put a radar in Grenada, he runs directly into conflict with the financial interests of the Nigerian oil firm with which he is negotiating. So he's caught between a rock and a hard place. Now, Mr. Mitchell needs to make a strategic command decision.
Yes.
And that is in the best interest of the people of Grenada. And I would say to Mr. Decon Mitchell, stand up, hold a public referendum with the people of Grenada and let them decide what they want for Grenada in the best interest of energy independence. And then you can tell your sponsors, as well as the United States, exactly what your decision is. The people will decide.
Mr. Pereira and Mr. Corbett, I want you to
look at that. Yes. It's interesting the Nigerian, the aspect in Nigeria that he mentioned, because the Nigerians are very much involved in this area, and they're also play in Guyana.
Yes. Okay, so that's great, and that's great. People, I think I'm trying to send a YouTube link. Did you receive it? It's important and must be watched before it gets down. No, could you tell us? Could you resend it? I'm not sure where you send it. Okay, there as somebody saying Russia actually helped. Is it the ANC during apartheid? Yeah, that's what they're saying. That Russia helped out.
Russia supported the liberation struggles. Yes, they did. They provided. Yeah.
Yes. Now, can you, Mr. Pereira, and probably you can respond better here. Well, Mr. Corbin can too. But do you think Russia is really on Black people's side? Do you think they support Black people?
I look, my brother. This is how I would put. I would answer that question in that way. I will show you as it. As an African and a Pan-Africanist, I will ask, of course, how many of our people are on our side with what we are fighting for before I talk about the Russians, right? Because before I answer that question, I've always said that I have to look at the fake Pan-Africanists, the fake the leaders who are responsible for a lot of our conditions of where we are.
Yes.
Okay? Let me give you an example, but you're asking me about if Russia is on the side of Black people. When the first invasion, when Italy first went into Ethiopia, Abyssinia, Menelik, the Ethiopian emperor, king, he sent some emissaries, he sent some representatives to go to the Tsar of Russia to seek assistance, military assistance. And Russia sent 100 volunteers, went and they took these mounted guns to Ethiopia to help Ethiopia in the fight against Italy. This is before Mussolini, right? Do you know what was the basis of that solidarity? Orthodox Christianity. The Russian Orthodox Church came to the assistance of Ethiopia because Ethiopia, they had more in common, their teachings is the same with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And both saw Roman Catholic Italy as the enemy.
Yes.
So that solidarity wasn't based. The Russians didn't say, oh, we're going to help the Ethiopians because they're Black. We're going to help the Ethiopians because they're Orthodox Christians like us. and Roman Catholic Rome, Italy, is waging a war against them. So that's how I would answer that question. So it's not about whether who like that. You know, some of the biggest obstacles to the unification on the African continent, the African unity, have been neo-colonial African leaders. So I won't go to ask if the Russians love black people. I am going to ask if Museveni of Uganda, Paul Kagame of Rwanda, and Ruto, if they really love black people or if they love Africans. That's where I put the questions, because they are not doing anything
for Africans.
Yes.
Mr. Corbin?
I want to support Brother Pereira's statement with regard to Orthodox Christianity in Ethiopia. And the reason I can say that with absolute certainty is that having visited Ethiopia and understood and in Addis Ababa, and I mentioned this on a podcast last Sunday, in Addis Ababa, I spoke with a gentleman who said, do you understand why Orthodox Christianity is so strong in Ethiopia? And he took me to a museum in Addis Ababa and showed me this transcripts as well as the hieroglyphs of Judeo-Christendom and the people that were the original people of Israel. And the original people of Israel are black. They're not the white people that you see occupying.
Correct.
They're not the Slavic generation that you see occupying the strip of desert in the Middle East today. Okay, the original people of Israel are black. The Israelites are black. And to reinforce this, when I was in Mali, I visited the site of the oldest university in the world, which was the University of Timbuktu, the first university which educated people from all over the Arab as well as the Mongolian diaspora. People came from as far away as Mongolia to be educated in Timbuktu.
Yes.
And there, what is left, you see hieroglyphs as well as transcripts that Israel was occupied by black people. Judeo-Christendom or Orthodox Christianity had its origins in Africa.
Correct.
What you see happening, what you see Russia embracing, and Russia recently allowed the Western media into its Christian archives and showed them the copies of the black and the first czars, or the accession of the first czars of Russia, who were all black. So don't come to me and tell me that the white people out in Israel are supposed to be the children of God. They're nothing more than a criminal organization of a 6,000-year-old death cult called the Khazarian Mafia from the degenerate Amalekite tribe.
Yes. Perhaps next week we can deal with this point that this person is raising. The Americans are planning to use Nigeria as a base to attack the Sahel. And
good luck with that.
I would disagree with that at all. I would say that position, I can see that.
Yes.
Well, the thing is, the United States of America has had a long relationship with Nigeria based on oil interests. Okay. Now, if the United States of America can influence Nigerian oil companies to ditch Caribbean interests, then that rules out the competition to establishing Venezuela as the United States oil hegemony. Okay, so let's look at the geopolitical situation. If you can destroy Nigerian interests in the Caribbean, then it bears merit that Venezuelan and U.S. Israel ideology would bear fruit, okay, with regard to oil competition. Because if Nigeria comes into the region and is operating at a cheaper cost than what the United States oil interests are, then that's going to cause a conflict because the Caribbean countries are going to go with the cheapest vendor. Okay? At the end of the day, the situation comes down to this. The United States of America is ill-advised to operate any kind of military operation out of Nigeria, simply because Nigeria is the scam capital of the world. And if you thought that 20 years of conflict or looting in Afghanistan was bad, well, go into Nigeria. Okay? A Nigerian will convince you to take your shoes off and then sell them back to you for a profit. Okay? That is a fact. Now, at the end of the day, the most important thing is, and Mr. Pereira is a very important point, every country that the United States of America has entered has ended in chaos, with the exception of one. And that is Afghanistan. Look at the government in Afghanistan. Look at the government that has taken power again in Afghanistan. Now you say, well, that was a horrific regime. They kill women, they kill children, and so on and so forth. Yes, they do. But it is the only territory in Southwest Asia that has never been conquered.
Yeah.
Since biblical times.
Yes.
Afghanistan is the only territory that has never been conquered by any power. Not even Alexander the Great could conquer Afghanistan.
Yes, he turned back.
Okay, he turned back when he got to Afghanistan because the ferocity of the resistance that he raised, he could not deal with. Afghanistan has never been conquered. Why? I raised this question yesterday in my radio program on 246 Bajan Vibes Radio, that Jamaica exists on the position of a spiritual portal of collective energy of its people. Afghanistan is one of them. Draw a line at 23 degrees across the globe, and it dissects Jamaica and Afghanistan. This is not hyperbole. This is a fact. And if you're looking seriously at understanding the logistics of how the global geopolitical spectrum is calibrated with regard to around energy and what is happening around us, if you miss that point, nothing makes sense. When you embrace that point with an open mind, then your collective consciousness about the progression of what we need to achieve for our regions becomes much more clear.
Yeah. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this afternoon. What a program this was. I don't think I've ever had Mr. Pereira and Mr. Corbin at even 80 persons. I think I came to 81 afternoon. But the fact that you guys have joined the program, we had over 600 sometimes people watching the live. I want to thank you. And remember now, ladies and gentlemen, to like the live. I don't want to come off the program and see only 20 likes. I want to see over 500 likes, okay, on the program, so that we can send. Now, the likes are not for me. The likes really is to push the videos along, because the algorithm system is controlled and they don't want this information to go out. So you have to help this information to go out. So please, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pereira and Mr. Corbin have not wasted their time just to have the algorithm bury the video. So please make sure that you're liking the video and you're leaving a comment on the video. Mr. Pereira, you last word, and then Mr. Corbin.
Well, I just want to say before I go, Brother Andrew, you're doing an excellent job. Keep going with this. And it's good that you had Mr. Corbin on it.
Yeah, and I want to see you more often. I want to see you.
We're here anytime.
Yes, please, please, because you have a lot of to offer, Mr. Corbin.
Yeah. Well, I would just like to thank all of our audience for joining us this afternoon, and I would like to make a special shout out to all of those patrons who were gathered today at the South Dakota Race Circuit in Guyana. I hope the action was great. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Okay, as a race car engineer, I'm sitting here trying to find somebody to tell me who won what race. So yes, depending on who won one race, I may actually put some rum in this later on.
All right.
Yes. So thank you. Now, we have to coordinate, because Mr. Corbin and Mr. Pereira, Mr. Corbin already knows, I have two other channels. I have Caribbean and Latin American News Now, but this is my premier channel. I think I should try to build this up. Now, make sure that you go to my Andrew Tucker report and the Latin American Caribbean News Now and make sure all of you subscribe. Please subscribe so that we can build the channel and we can grow, because we need to inform our Caribbean people. We are a mighty people and we have potential if we educate ourselves. Because remember now that what knowledge is power. That's what I wanted. Knowledge is power. And if we have knowledge, we'll be able to conquer the world. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. And see you.
All right. All the best, brother.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah, same to you. All right. Bye.
Same here.